Hello, my name is Kai, and I am a bit of a rambler. I like to travel, learn, and tell stories. And today I want to talk about something that I didn't realize was sort of unknown despite its ubiquity, because I use it all the time. For the past, several years, I've only used an app that isn't Airbnb a couple times. And I've also rented apartments from, local direct face-to-face relationships. Here's $100, let me in that little hole in the wall kind of thing. But for the most part, when I'm going to a new country for the first time, I do use Airbnb. And the largest part of it is that it's the most convenient and it's the most available. There are some countries where Airbnb isn't as popular, but that number of countries has dwindled from when I started traveling until today, decade and a half later. Now Airbnb is pretty much everywhere. It's difficult to find a country that doesn't have it, unless because of the housing crises, they are banning Airbnb. And that is one of the things I want to talk about. But I kind of want to start with very common questions I receive about Airbnb, and I definitely have got these questions on and off, and I don't get them only about Airbnb, I get them about all booking platforms, but I'm the most familiar with Airbnb. I've read about their role in the housing crises as it has happened since they started, basically. But I think I assumed that everybody knew the same things about using the Airbnb app that I did because I used it so much. So it was a part of my life. I just assumed, well, yeah, of course, this is how it works. These are the discounts you get, and these are the countries it's available. Just very basic things that I didn't realize are not common knowledge because it's such a part of my world that I never really examined it that closely. When I first started traveling, I used Booking, and I think I used Trivago once. I used another one that I can't even remember the name of, but it's very popular in Southeast Asia to find hotels, and they'll specifically give discounts, the hotels will. So I've used a bunch of different booking apps, but through the years, and I'm not saying they're morally correct, so don't quote me on that, but Airbnb has been the most convenient and available utility to find an apartment in a place, especially if I'm just like, let's go. Because I don't like traveling on a very detailed plan. I'm a pretty big fan of throw caution to the wind and go to the place that feels right to me. I mean, a huge part of that is that flight tickets don't really fluctuate as much as people think, certainly. Oh geez, maybe I should do a flight ticket one. Now, there's not much to say, except flight tickets, people think it's the closer you get to the date, the more expensive the tickets get, and while that is generally true, flight tickets do go up and down drastically every few hours, literally by $100 or more. That's not uncommon at all. And there's basically no difference that I can see between 10 days before the flight leaves and 3 months or a year before the flight leaves. A year, 3 months, and 10 days before the flight leaves, just anecdotally, those prices are just about in the same ballpark. Maybe they're $20 different, and not up or down. I mean, the 10-day in advance ticket is just as likely to be cheaper than the year in advance ticket, and the other way around. Flight tickets are extremely dynamic. The $10 one could be cheaper. It's all about just the fluctuation, but I don't see much fluctuation in the ticket prices until I'm less than 2 weeks out, and then I see the trend of ticket prices going up, unless the flight is unbooked, and then the ticket prices go down. So very often I've booked a flight within a week or less, and I get a better price than I would have gotten if I booked it 5 months ago. Okay, that's the ticket price section over. I probably will have to dive deep into that, because that's probably another thing that I just assume people know all about, but every time I talk about ticket prices, people have a lot of the same questions. which makes perfect sense. If I was talking to a painter, I would have the same questions they have heard 1,000 times before because I'm not a painter and want to know the most salient aspects of their craft. But my craft is travel, so let's talk about Airbnb. Real quick, what is Airbnb? In case you've never heard of it, which would be nuts, you should tell me if you've never heard of it. That would be amazing. Not because I'd be like, oh my gosh, that person hasn't. I'd literally be very interested in anyone who hasn't heard of Airbnb before. I don't know, I guess it would be to now on the same level of like, do you know what Hershey's chocolate is? Well, if you're not in the US, maybe you don't because it's the worst chocolate in the world. You get my point. Airbnb is a booking app where you can reserve a room in a house, a camping spot if you want to on a field, an RV spot, or an entire home or house or an apartment or a condo, whatever. You can book all types of accommodation, habitation, instead of having to go to, I don't even know what the hotel websites are anymore. Expedia, I guess, right? They do hotels, and Skyscanner does hotels now also. But instead of having to book a hotel, you can see private renters who rent out their spaces. And this part is kind of important to clarify. Airbnb is a company, they're a middleman. That's the easiest way to think about Airbnb. They made a platform so that renters and rentees can connect, and the rentees can rent a place. In the same way, before all these booking apps came along, Booking.com and Airbnb and those, hotels, there were hotel websites, and that's where you used to go. You want to go to a city, you look up Best Western, and then you'd type in the city you were in, you'd go to their website specifically. Then there were aggregators, and all of the hotels were on one website. And then that evolved, and they made a website very similar to that aggregator, but it's for renters, people who own property that they don't need to live in all the time or don't want to, and they rent out to other people. Me. I want to bring that up because I keep hearing the cursing of Airbnb, which is totally okay. They are not some benevolent company, and they aren't doing anything out of the good of their heart. They're a for-profit platform that connects renters and rentees. They make it super convenient for you to rent a house in any country, super convenient if you own an empty house to rent it to anybody. You just boop, boop, boop on the computer for 20 minutes, and then you can either rent a house or rent out your house. And every time that transaction happens, every time I pay $300 for a house, Airbnb takes $50 of that, or so. It's a large amount. But if you don't use a private booking site like Airbnb, you have to pay a rental company. There are specific property ownership companies or property rental companies that you'll sign over your deed to them as kind of, you can think of it technically as a sublet. You let your property to a property management company. They advertise and rent it out to renters. Just like in every place, if you see the plaque on the side of your apartment building that says, Columbia Realty Company, some guy privately owns that building probably, and they are letting Columbia Realty Company rent it to you. And every time a new renter shows up, Columbia Realty gets a little cut of that. And every private booking website, like Airbnb, is the exact same thing, but it's just for private property owners without a second middleman. They've taken the place of a property management company, the platform of Airbnb. So it is cheaper, pretty much all of the time, for the renter and the rentee to use Airbnb, because the property management company is paying for all of their employees and all of their equipment, cleaning crews, security crews, cameras, inspections, everything, emergency insurance. The property management handles all property management aspects. And because they handle all of that, they take a fee in addition to the homeowner paying for all of those services. It's just, I don't want to think about it. I'm going to let this company do it, and I'll pay them to do it. Just like when you go to a restaurant. It's more expensive because you're paying for the restaurant's wait staff and ingredients and setup, the table, the labor it takes to put those utensils on the table and then take them off later, wash them, roll them up in a new napkin for the next person who comes. The middleman manages everything if you don't want to do it yourself, so you pay them a little more money. With Airbnb, you don't need to hire a cleaning crew, and there are no union wages. So you could just hire someone who's like, I'll clean the house for $10, and boom, you just knocked off probably 99% of the cleaning crew's budget that a traditional property management crew uses for Airbnb. Or say you're really good with electronics. Then you don't need to hire any electricians if something goes wrong. You go in there, replace a broken socket or burnt fuse, done. Saved a couple $100. So since the circle of people is smaller, it's usually just the renter and the rentee. It's cheaper for both parties to use a digital contract between two parties rather than a traditional management estate, which is technically between three parties plus all of the different groups that the middleman is connected to. So Airbnb doesn't have cleaning crews, it doesn't have electricians, it doesn't have maintenance guys or any service personnel outside of their own company. They don't have any service personnel for any of the houses that the renters are renting out. And importantly, Airbnb does not own any of the homes themselves. When you call them up, they can suggest how to deal with something, how you can deal with it as a renter with the guest you are hosting, or how you as a guest can deal with a problem you are having with the host. But they're just mediators. They don't have the resources or infrastructure that a traditional property management company has. And I think that's good because it's simpler, and if they have a cleaning crew on hand, the traditional property management company, if you cannot prove that you left the property you rented perfectly clean, then you pay the cleaning fee that you signed away in the beginning. On Airbnb, you can choose places that don't have cleaning fees in the contract you two sign. And you don't have to sign up for 6 months. You don't have to sign up for a year. You can sign up for 1 day, or you can sign up for 1 year. You can rent however long you want to on these online booking apps. So digital platforms like Airbnb are succeeding, despite whatever problems they bring with them, because they are more convenient for the parties involved and they are cheaper. If you look up an apartment in your city and you want to rent it, you have to sign a 6-month lease. Maybe there are some that are 3-month or month by month, but with Airbnb, 17 days? Sure, and it's a click away. And it's cheaper. Plus, you're probably going to be interacting directly with the landlord, which you are never going to be interacting with a traditional property management company. That's the whole point of traditional property management companies. Someone that wants to rent out their property, but never ever talk to the guests that they host. So, of course, like most other successful digital platforms, Uber versus traditional taxi cabs, Skyscanner versus a in-person travel agent. Digital accommodation booking apps are cheaper, more convenient, faster, easier to use, you feel more in control. They have all these advantages that traditional faceless companies in the physical world cannot supply. Just being in the physical world is more expensive, so they can't compete with Airbnb, or Uber, or Skyscanner. Even though all of those platforms perform the same function as a real-life middleman, if you're doing it digitally, they perform all of those services and more, quicker, cheaper, and more conveniently for both parties around that middleman. So I often say on here that you can live anywhere for $500 to $1,000. $500 will allow you to live in most countries in the world. If you have $500 as a remote job, you will be able to live in most countries of the world. For all of the other countries, it'll be $1,000 US. And those are the expensive ones. You've heard about housing crises in certain countries. Canada, Australia's getting one. The US obviously has had one for 4 decades. But if you are a traveler, that doesn't really concern you. You can still live in any of those countries for $1,000 a month, because you aren't forced in Canada to live in Calgary. You type in Canada, you can shift the price down to $800 per month, and you will see every single rented home for under $800 a month. There are apartments in Canada, right now in the 2025 housing crisis in Canada, for under $500. They are a room, they include utilities, you can go live there. Now, I don't recommend people go to Canada because it's more expensive than a ton of other countries. It's more difficult to travel around in. A lot of people don't like that amount of cold weather. I do. And it requires visas from a lot of countries to go to Canada. Or, for the majority of countries, you can fly to Thailand, have a great time for 3 to 6 months, depending on where you're from. If you apply for a visa, you can stay longer. And everything is dirt cheap there. All of the apartments are about half as much as they are in Canada. They have incredibly high-quality healthcare. They have all of the amenities that a more expensive country has in Thailand, plus exceptional customer service and general friendly culture, just like some place like Canada actually does have. And you don't have to contend with the 8-month winter. And I want to go to Canada myself. I'm very interested in it. When I received all of these questions about Canada recently, and specific pricing guesses and assertions that did not match the available listing prices, I looked up the prices because I know that Canada has had a housing crisis for a long time, and that is part of the reason I haven't checked it out. There are 200 other countries that are easier to get into and cheaper, and I was just visiting all of those countries. But so many people have been asking me, how can I get to Canada? And I was pretty surprised to find how affordable it was. I was kind of worried because it is in a housing crisis, and everything tells you that Canada is absolutely unaffordable. But just like nearly every other country you can look up on Airbnb, you can get a room for under $500. It might not be as nice as Thailand, like I was talking about, but it's going to be a room with utilities. It'll have hot water. The majority of them have a shared kitchen and other basic amenities. And Airbnb has hundreds of listings all across Canada, West Coast, East Coast. East Coast is cheaper because it's French majority speaking, so that makes people who don't speak French uncomfortable. But if you're a traveler, that's great. You get a couple $100 discount and more choices because other people don't like different languages, which is very common. People are uncomfortable around a lot of things that they don't associate with themselves. If someone looks different than they do, they think, am I safe? If somebody sounds different than they do, am I safe? Did I do something wrong? But after you travel a couple times, those pretty much fall away, especially if you learn any other language, because then it's just like, okay, they're also just talking about farting. Like, all the people are the same. So that's great. You probably should go in the eastern part, the French-speaking majority part of Canada, because you can speak a little French. The culture is going to be a little more divergent than the western part, which is going to be very similar to the US. More similar than Montreal and Quebec, anyway. And you'll pay less money for better accommodations in the country you want to go to. I don't recommend people start out with Canada as their beginning of indefinite travel, but you certainly can if you're dead set on Canada, if you love skiing or whatever. If you love the cold like me, yeah, that's a pretty good place to go, and you can get an apartment for under $500 a month. You can shop at supermarkets, cook for yourself, and you can live in Canada for under $1,000 a month. And that's why I am talking about Airbnb in this episode, because I got so many questions and concerns about Canada, and notably inaccurate guesses and theories about the pricing situation in Canada, when I brought it up recently, from native Canadians and from other countries. And I was shocked at the misinformation, at the simply wrong by the numbers kind of thing. I didn't realize that so many people didn't use Airbnb, but of course they don't, because so many people are not travelers. So of course I'm going to get those questions. Those people are unfamiliar with the platform I'm talking about. It just didn't hit me, really. I love going on Airbnb and just typing in Tanzania and seeing what houses are available for me to rent in Tanzania. I'm like, okay, $300 a month in Tanzania for an air-conditioned house with all utilities. Pretty cool. That is real, by the way. I've been wanting to go to Tanzania literally since it's like the first country I've ever wanted to visit because I did a 5th grade research project on Tanzania. And every now and then I check Tanzania because I assume I will go there someday. Right now, at the recording of this podcast, there are 28 homes for under $300 per month. So, having traveled and knowing the practicalities of travel is pretty great because now I can trust those prices. Because not once in 15 years of traveling have I booked a thing on Airbnb. Actually, I've never booked a price anywhere where I booked the price and then showed up and for some reason the price had changed. That has never happened to me. Because you pay beforehand, you have the contract, you're there, and then you leave. That is how it is supposed to work, and I'm happy to report that for me and for literally every single other traveler I know, in real life, every time they have used Airbnb specifically, they pay for it, they receive their allotted days in the home they choose, it works out. So I can trust those $300 houses in Mombasa, Tanzania. So when I see these $500 apartments in Canada, which many people think don't exist or are impossible, I can't be sure because I haven't lived in one yet, but there are reviews, sometimes dozens of reviews for each rental unit that you can read. I love reading those because I like quieter neighborhoods. So if a place looks like it's within a block or two of a major road, I always read the reviews to find if one of the reviewers has said, it's a pretty quiet place. If they say, it can be a little noisy, that means it's loud for me, for my tastes. And so I don't get that place. And these reviews are good. Again, this is another decade and a half thing. I've been reading these reviews and judging where I stay based on the reviews of other Airbnb travelers. I've never been to one where the review said, it's quiet, and then it was super noisy. They're usually very accurate descriptions. I have had roadwork start outside one of my Airbnbs once. Actually, you know what? No, I think that was a direct rental when I was in China, actually. Never mind. Between the convenience, the stability of the prices, and the general availability of accommodation, I don't have any real complaints about Airbnb. I don't like their role in housing crises, but maybe we should talk about that first because their role is allowing us, people who own homes, homeowners and renters, to take advantage of an imbalanced housing equation. Airbnb is not doing anything different than any traditional property management company. Ever since there were property management companies, ever since there were owners of land, they have rented out their land to other people. Airbnb has just made it more convenient and cheaper for both parties, renter and rentee. But Airbnb isn't buying houses. They're taking advantage of homeowners wanting to make passive income off of their properties. Now, because it's easier these days to rent out your home, a lot of these properties have become investment properties. And that is contributing to the housing crisis. But when a drunk driver hits a family, I don't get angry at the car the drunk driver was driving. I get angry at the driver. I think the driver should go to jail. I don't think the car should go to jail. And I kind of feel the same way about Airbnb and the booking apps that act like them. They are facilitating a homeowner making passive income off of, by definition, their investment property. Even if it was their home for 15 years before, it doesn't matter. As soon as you list it on Airbnb as a house to rent or as a room to rent, that is an investment property. You have put money into it, and now you are making money off of it. So it's fine to be angry at Airbnb for the role they are playing in the housing crises across the world. And they're certainly not blameless, and they take a lot of money out of these transactions. Sometimes a lot of money that hurts the property owner themselves. Or they add cleaning fees that are mandatory so that you have to pay more even if the room doesn't have a cleaning crew or even if you clean it yourself. So Airbnb is not some perfect, benevolent company. They're a for-profit company that connects renters and rentees. And that's what they should be viewed as. They facilitate the greed of a property owner and match that with the need of a property seeker. When you buy and sell a stock, you don't buy and sell it at the rate it actually is. You don't buy and sell it at its actual price, because its actual price is whatever the owner of the stock is asking, and however much the buyer of the stock wants that stock. So there will be a price of a stock, but the price to buy it could be much higher. If the stock is $5, you can sell it at $5.50. You can sell it at $6.50 depending on what news came out that day. And everybody's going to want that stock. So you can price the stock higher than its actual price. And then that magically becomes the price, because people are willing to buy it at that higher price. It is the same thing with property. That's the old supply and demand. And saying supply and demand doesn't mean there's no moral judgment on it. You can be angry at supply and demand. But supply and demand is the reason those entire houses, there are dozens of houses in Tanzania you can rent for under $300, because there's less demand. Wealthy tourists go to Tanzania less. Wealthy tourists go to Canada more. And so there are far fewer homes. I did find one for $296, but I just don't believe it. But there are far fewer homes in Canada for a monthly rent under $300. More wealthy people are looking to rent those places in Canada, and so the prices are higher. Less people are looking to rent those homes in Tanzania, so the prices are lower. That's all it is. Those are the numbers. The numbers should not have a moral judgment affixed to them. That's just how it works. You can be irritated at the homeowners, or you can even be angry at the rentees who are willing to pay these prices that you think are ridiculous. But I don't get angry at either of them, because they're just part of that equation, and most humans don't feel like they have any control over many aspects of their lives, especially financial ones. And also, let's put our boots on the ground. There are 200 countries. If you want to travel, you can go to almost all of those countries at your leisure, and you can live in those countries for $500 to $1,000 USD per month. For the majority of countries in the world, less than $500 a month. You can get a place for $300. You can make your own food. That is going to be less than $500 a month. Most places on Airbnb include utilities. I have seen a couple apartments that said you have to pay utilities at the end of the Airbnb contract, but that goes against the contract, unless you specifically agree to it, which don't, because there's no reason to. There's always another option that has all the utilities and Wi-Fi included. So most countries in the world, less than $500 US, doable. It is there. And I say that because the number $500 US is not a lot of money for actually a lot of countries. If you can get a remote job that pays you more than $500 USD a month, you can travel to most countries in the world indefinitely. If you want to stay permanently in just one country, that's a different story, but you can very easily travel for 3, 6 months, or a year at a time to different countries. And you can work on getting a permanent visa if you want to, for whatever reason, or a permanent residency in a specific country if you want to. Now, for the other countries that are more expensive, Switzerland, Canada, the US, yeah, they're more expensive, but they're a few $100s more expensive. So in the cheapest parts of the world, probably Tanzania or India is a great one, you'll get a house for $300-something. In a lot of other countries, you'll get $300 for a private room with a private bathroom. Basically an apartment, not quite a house, but you will get your own private apartment for $300-something. And then if you go to all of the expensive countries, you're going to get a private room for closer to $500, maybe $600. Actually, let's just go to Switzerland, because that's the country I am most familiar with as the most expensive country. It's much more expensive than Canada or any other country that I have looked up, really. Now I'm wondering, maybe Vatican City? I bet not, though. I bet it, because Vatican City's surrounded by Rome, so no, definitely not. Anyway, even in Switzerland, where things are very expensive, this is a very important aspect to remember. If you are a long-term traveler, if you're going to stay for more than 27 days in one place, you get a huge discount on apartments. This is actually one of the misconceptions I wanted to bring up, because Native Canadians and other people alike were asking about the housing crisis and saying there's no way that you can get an apartment for less than $1,200, for less than $1,700, whatever they were quoting me about in the big cities. And if you go on Airbnb and you type in 28 days from March 26th until April 24th, 29 days, whatever, all of those places are going to have a discount. Airbnb suggests that hosts give monthly discounts if it's over 28 days. It might be required now because I haven't seen a host not give a monthly discount in years. And these are not, 5% off. These are massive discounts. So let's go back to Switzerland. I'm going to pull up some listings right now. There's a room in Somea, Switzerland, $1,031 for 1 month. But because it's a month, on Airbnb, you get the 30% monthly discount, and it is $651. So, $651, you can go live in Switzerland for a month. If you make $1,000 US per month, you can go live in the most expensive country in the world, as long as their immigration duration allows you to. Now, Switzerland is a tiny country, and they don't have a lot of people. There's like 9 million people in the whole country, something like that. That plays into why one country doesn't have as many housing options as another country. But this is just to show that on Airbnb, just this basic platform, in the most expensive country I'm familiar with very few options, the houses are affordable. Under $1,000 USD per month, you can go live in that country. Now, again, I don't suggest it, because traveling's all about fun and comfort for me. I am traveling because my life becomes instantly much more comfortable if I'm not living in the US for tons of social, cultural, and legal reasons, as in civil rights being stripped away, or getting shot. But the financial reason ain't nothing to sneeze at. That's a great reason to travel indefinitely. Now, there are a few modes of doing this. You can go without saving anything. You can invest in the index fund and make your yearly rent after a couple of years of working. Or you can do a combination of the two. Let's start out with if you invest into an index fund that has a 4% yield, which is a pretty common yield for index funds. If you go teach English and you put in $1,000 every month, save $1,000 from your salary every month, the next year you're going to have $480. So that's a quarter of your annual rent for a ton of countries. Airbnb's minimum price is $150 per month now. There are apartments for $80 you can get in other countries. But on Airbnb, the lowest price is $150, and you can find that in dozens of countries. So after 1 year of a 25-hour work week, you wouldn't have to worry about rent for 3 months the next year. Now, if you get a TEFL certificate, you're probably making closer to $2,500 a month. So you can save closer to $2,000. And so that means after 1 year of investing $2,000 in the index fund instead of $1,000, you can pay for 6 months of next month's rent. From 1 year to the next, you don't have to worry about rent for 6 months. And that's the same if you make more than $2,500 a year. If you work at $2,500 a month and invest $2,000 in an index fund that pays 4% back, then you will get your entire annual rent paid by your passive income from the index fund after 2 years of working 25-hour weeks teaching English. And it doesn't matter that you're teaching English. If you have a job that's not teaching English, if you're investing $2,000 a month, that's $24,000 at the end of the year. 4% of that is $960. That's 6 months rent. 2 years, 12 months rent. On Airbnb, too. If you get local apartments, you can find $80 apartments in all of Southeast Asia and East Asia. Well, not Japan, but definitely in China. To bring Airbnb back into this equation, you can find apartments for $150 on Airbnb. If you teach online, you'll make that minimum $1,500 working 25 hours a week. That's $15 an hour. That's a very common low rate for an English teacher online or especially offline. And if you're online, you can rent with Airbnb any of those $150 apartments, teach straight from your apartment, and save the 1,000 plus every month, or the 2,000 plus if you have a TEFL certificate and you get a job that pays 2,500. Now, this is just if you want to stop working altogether, which is nice. You can do that in a relatively short time if you want to travel and use a booking app like Airbnb. So for the person who doesn't want to pay rent, after 2 years of investing $2,000 into an index fund, your subsequent year's rent will be paid for if you're finding apartments on Airbnb. This is great if you're a traveler, if you like to learn new things, because you won't be tied to one place. You get to type in Guatemala or Belize or the US or really any country, and a lot of them have $150 apartments on Airbnb. They would have lower. They used to have lower. You could set it as low as you wanted, and you could stay in an $80 apartment per month. So if you're working toward retirement early, Airbnb is a great way to do it. You can get $150 apartments in a ton of countries. Take your pick. And if you're spending $150 on rent, it'll be pretty easy to spend $150 per month on food also. Rent and food kind of match a lot of the time in a lot of these countries. But even if you want to spend double and you're only making $1,500 a month, that's still $150 plus $300. You're still saving $1,050 per month. And every $1,000 you invest in an index fund that has a 4% yield, you're receiving $40 in passive income annually and indefinitely. So with rents at $150, if you want to travel around the world, that's a pretty great way to do it. You just have to invest enough of your extra income, which your monthly income can be as low as $1,500, and you can still invest enough in 4 years to not pay rent again, basically, as long as the minimum number is 150. And like I said, in countries, if you talk to the building owners directly, you'll find lower monthly prices for apartments. And for every extra 1,000 you put in there, if you're making 2,500 instead of 1,500, that shortens to 2 years. But if you're living in many countries, especially the US, then you're paying over 1,000 in rent. So if you have a remote job, let's say you're making 2,500 at your remote job, in the US you can probably only save a couple hundred a month, maybe. If your rent is 1,000 and your groceries are 400 a month, you probably are paying health insurance, car insurance, plus all of your utilities. If you're in a cold place, that's another couple $100s. Or a hot place for air conditioning. Versus, use Airbnb as an investment vehicle and pay $150 per month, all utilities included, water included, save the rest of your income. If you're looking to invest money so you have a nest egg later or whatever, your retirement fund, getting $150 apartments on Airbnb is a great way to do it, especially if you have a remote job. You can live in a bunch of safe, interesting places, and from one flight ticket to the next, one day to the next, you'll instantly be saving whatever your utilities, rent, and all the different kinds of insurance you have. You'll be saving all of that, and you can invest it wisely if you want to. Now, a lot of people don't do that, and I think that's totally fine also. If you don't invest it, and you're making, $1,500 per month, that means that you spend $150 on an Airbnb room, and at the end of that month, you have 9 more months of rent, because you have $1,350 left. Now, of course, you're eating food, so let's just say you spend more than twice as much on your food that month, because that's such a fun part of traveling, living in cheap countries and eating the great, delicious food they have everywhere. So $150 plus $350 for food, $500. But you have $1,000 left over. So that's 6 months of rent plus $100 in groceries. A month is only 4 weeks. When I was living in China, I couldn't believe how quickly I saved money. Because I was living in a house that cost about $150, and I was only spending $150 on food per month. And so I had $1,200 left over, 4 months. Every month I worked was 4 months of rent and food, because I was staying in a $150 apartment, and if you just type in whatever country you want to go to on Airbnb, it'll tell you if that country has $150 apartments. China? Yes. India? You betcha. Oh, actually, wait, the minimum is different in India. Oh, never mind. Okay, so I thought the minimum was 150 because that's what you can put in the filter that I always use. It defaults to 150, but the actual listings can be lower. So in India, it's 100 per month for a room, a private room. Vietnam also has a bunch of rooms between 100 and 150. So there are many countries. I don't want to list every single country, but if you check, there are going to be a lot of countries where you can rent $150 apartments. I guess let's go somewhere in Central America or something, shift continent, so it's not all Asia. Yeah, there's a $100 room in Guatemala. How about South America? Yeah, Colombia has 20 places listed under $150. So there are, on all the continents, you'll be able to find somewhere that you can live for $150. Or less, straight on Airbnb. Just type in the country, set the filter, set the maximum to $150, and then check the location, check the apartments, check the reviews, check the location, check everything, and then go there to save money easily. The numbers are just so much lower than many people think if they grew up in one country and are used to a certain set of numbers that you're supposed to pay for housing. I think it's really important to let people know that by the numbers, Airbnb is very cheap. And when you hear people talk about expensive housing crises in places like Canada, and they say, well, you can't get anything there, that's an oft-repeated refrain, but type it in on the booking app, and you will find prices for half that much, for $500. So Airbnb is a super useful investment tool. It can even be in the same country you're in. If you don't want to travel to a different country, but you still want to save money, check out the available cities in the US. Let's check out the US. Now, that is an extremely expensive country to live in for no good reason, because the houses are made out of the same things that houses are made of in the rest of the world. But since so many of you are Americans, let's check that out. It looks like the average monthly rent in the US is about $1,300 right now. There are 51 private rooms right now for $650. I just set the filter to maximum half the average price. So whatever you are paying now in the US, which apparently the average is a little over $1,300, plus your utilities, you could move into one of these rooms, private room, $650 a month, all utilities included, and Wi-Fi. I think it's really easy wherever you're living and whatever situation you're living in to think this is roughly what living is like. This is roughly how much it costs. This is roughly what I can do. But if you look at these booking apps, there are affordable alternatives to the American lifestyle. There are 50 Americans right now who can move to a place and save whatever their salary is minus $650 plus food. That is a significant amount of money for a lot of Americans, because US pay is higher than in a lot of the rest of the world. The average income per person in the US hasn't really changed in 10 years. It's still about $65,000 a year. But if you're making $60,000 right now, whatever you're spending, you can cut that down to $10,000 a year for Airbnb rent, utilities, Wi-Fi, and food, and save the other $50,000 or $55,000, whatever. Or just keep it simple. Spend $650 per month on your room, $350 a month on food. You have $55,000 left at the end of the year for the average American. And even if you're working at a Burger King right now and you're like, I don't make $65,000, that's still $650 plus $350. That's only $12,000 in rent per year. You can find another service job around the area you booked on Airbnb. And instead of paying what most Americans pay, you have chosen this cheap housing, and so you can save or invest the rest of your salary. You're not paying homeowners insurance, you're not paying utilities, you're not paying for Wi-Fi, you aren't paying maintenance fees or whatever other fees there are that are associated with traditional sedentary homeownership. When you're using Airbnb or another booking app, you pay one flat rate up front, and then you're in until your term is up, and you can extend that term if you like. It's much simpler and much more affordable. Okay, let's go through some of these questions people asked about Airbnb, or misconceptions they had about Airbnb. It doesn't matter if I can find a cheap apartment on Airbnb because I have to pay the plane fare to go to that country anyway. Now, from the US, a plane fare to anywhere is less than $500. It'll be less than $200 to get to Guatemala, for instance, because we talked about Guatemala earlier. And then you can pay $200 for an apartment in many places in Guatemala very easily. And so your expense for rent plus the flight is $400 that month. Now, if you stay in Guatemala for 3 months, then you're only spending about $65 per month on travel costs. Compared to how much you are saving in rent, an extra $65 is nothing. Yes, you spent $65 per month in travel costs, but you saved, on average for an American, $1,100 by booking a $150, $200 apartment down in Guatemala. $1,100 per month. I don't have a remote job, fluent English speakers, teach English for a little bit. You'll save more than $1,000 a month. You can use that for whatever you want to. Get back to your life in the States or whatever country you're from if you want to do that. Keep traveling if you don't want to do that. But that's what's so great about knowing these numbers. Just the fact that these numbers are telling us there are cheap, affordable housing options in safe, good countries. Many countries. You can start saving money immediately because these kinds of booking apps exist and you can just see across oceans what housing is available in which country. And if you're using Airbnb, you stay out of the US for 11 out of 12 months and you don't pay federal income tax up to about $126,000 every year. So if you've been listening to me talk about these numbers and wondering what about my taxes, if you move to Guatemala and then go to Panama or Colombia or whatever, if you go to other countries and you stay out of the US for 11 months out of 12 months, 330 days out of 365 days, they don't have to be consecutive, and they don't all have to be within the tax year you are paying. You claim Form 2555, Foreign Earned Income Exclusion, and you don't pay federal income tax up to $126,500. You don't have state income tax because you weren't living in a state. So all that income you're getting is not taxed, as long as it's earned income. If it's passive income, investments, or dividends, then you still have to pay taxes on unearned income. But yeah, that's another great thing about Airbnb. It takes you away from the tax burden of earned income in the US. Just traveling with Airbnb for $150 apartments or $300 apartments, whatever you want to get if you want a little luxury. If you save money by getting these apartments for 330 out of 365 days, then when you file your taxes, you don't have to pay $126,000 in federal income tax according to the IRS. It's called the physical presence test. And it doesn't matter if it's a US company that's paying you. It doesn't matter if it's a US bank account you're getting paid into. If you are not in the US, then you pass the physical presence test. To quickly recap, we have tons of questions about Canada, and tons of claims about the prices. You cannot get a room even in a rural home in Canada for less than $1,500, plus utilities, transportation, clothing, medication. Now, medication will obviously be cheaper in Canada, but clothing, transportation, you're going to have those expenses anyway, wherever you are. Except with public transport in Canada, you aren't going to be paying car insurance, so that's a nice boon. And then if you rent with Airbnb, or whatever booking app you want to use, you're not paying for utilities either, so that's another expense gone. And then, as you can see, if you go on the app, there are $500 Canadian apartments near the major population centers. Within the city limits, I mean. It needs to be brought up because I guess it's because US Americans listen to this podcast the most, and they're the most comfortable thinking about a foreign country if they're thinking about Canada, because that's the country I get comments about and I receive claims about the housing situation the most. But those numbers that they claim are incorrect. You can check the listings yourself. Instead of having to worry about $1,500 minimum plus utilities, you have utilities included for $500 to $800 all across the country, if for whatever reason you want to stay in Canada. Again, I recommend so many other countries before them. But if you do want to, yes, that fits into the category of more expensive countries that you can live in for under $1,000 per month. Another misconception is that you can only get rural homes in Canada. But Canada only has 20 million people, and their country is huge. So these homes, these apartments are in Edmonton, Calgary, the larger population centers of Canada. They're not in between two mountains in a valley. These are in the city proper. They're just in specific locations. Like, that's where those people that are renting those rooms at those prices live. So that's where you go to get that price. Supermarket selling apples, $8 a bag at one supermarket, $2 a bag at the other supermarket, identical apples. Go get the $2 one. So these cheap apartments, and all the other ones I mentioned, the $150 apartments in India, these are not in the middle of nowhere. You'll find ones that are in the middle of nowhere, but most apartments, because they are apartments, are going to be in a city somewhere. That's where most people live. That's where the majority of humans live. They live in population centers and cities. So most of these houses are in cities. Actually, I've received so many comments about Canada recently that I did a deep dive into the Airbnbs across the country, and now I'm like, man, I should go to Canada. Because I knew the housing crisis was terrible, but I didn't realize that there were so many $500 USD available apartments all over the country. So now that I know that, and I looked at so many to check the claims of these Canada naysayers, I'm way more interested in visiting Canada than I used to be. There are so many countries at prices I know are affordable because I've lived in them before or I've checked them on Airbnb before that I just didn't consider Canada because, well, one, it's usually on a different continent than I am. And two, because all I hear about is the expensive housing. And I was like, well, I'll get to it when I get to it. But so many people have been concerned about moving to Canada that now I know the price is perfectly affordable. All right, another one that I hear a lot from US Americans, pretty much only US Americans, is, okay, fine, the apartment is cheap in blank country, but they don't have whatever public service they're talking about, but they don't have good health care. They don't have good education. They don't have so and so and so. But they do, and even if the country you go to has less quality health care, it's actually not that important because of medical tourism. And Airbnb plays right into this. If you want to live in Vietnam, get the $150 apartments, super cheap, and you want affordable, high-quality healthcare, you can fly over to Thailand. Well, if you're in Vietnam, they're going to fly over there in an hour for $20. But you can fly over to Thailand and get their great quality healthcare. And it's not just Thailand. Colombia has great hospitals. Whatever continent you're in, whatever country you're in, one or several of the countries in that geographic location are going to have better healthcare than another country. So go to those places. If for whatever reason you need non-emergency medical care, you can easily fly to a country and rent an Airbnb for cheap near the hospital you're interested in that you're going to get your care in, and then go get that medical care. And these booking apps have all the information available 24/7, 365. So if you suddenly find out, oh crap, I'm diabetic, or whatever it is, I need a root canal, I need a hip replacement, whatever it is, if it's not an immediate emergency, which will be dealt with at whatever local hospital you're near, you can fly to the closest country with great medical care, and there are a lot of countries with great medical care, affordable great medical care, and get your medical care done there. I've been lucky, knock on wood. My teeth are my main problem. I flew to Thailand, fixed them all for extremely reasonable prices, stayed in an Airbnb while I was in Thailand. $300 a month, $270, something like that. I remember that one specifically because a cool Japanese couple owned it, and it was literally across the street. It was across the street, around the corner, 2 buildings down from the Bangkok International Dental Clinic. It was super close to the dental clinic I was going to go to. So I remember that place pretty well. I think it was about $270 per month. And I stayed there for a month, and I got all my teeth fixed up. the second time I started getting my teeth fixed. And then I was good. Ooh, okay, another huge one is that's an off-season price. Like winter in Canada or summer in Thailand, the months that people don't want to visit a country because it's too cold or too hot or it's monsoon season or whatever. You might hear that these prices I'm telling you are because it's not the right season to go to that country. But the main reason the prices of these apartments are so cheap, one, because you're choosing the country and countries have different costs of living. It doesn't matter what season it is if you choose a house in Thailand instead of the US. The Thailand accommodation is going to be much cheaper because the cost of living there is lower. Even if you get the same amenities, the same size apartment, everything's the exact same as you would get in the States, it's lower because that country's cost of living is lower. You're not paying less money for a lower quality of life. You're paying less money for the same or a better quality of life because everything is cheaper in a lot of these other countries. Countries are different. They have different social compacts. They have different agreements and social infrastructure than other countries. In the US, there's no emphasis placed on controlling rent. That's not part of the US-American social compact. The American government doesn't care to regulate how much money a renter can charge you for living in the US. That is different than other countries. In a lot of countries, they say this is how much you can charge, or this percentage of the average income in the area your house is in, that's how much you can charge. Governments around the world work really hard to make their countries affordable, and as a result, those countries are more affordable. Now, there are tons of other reasons, of course, but that's one pretty salient reason. Rent control, equitable, and affordable housing is not a civil consideration in the US like it is in many other countries. And I know that's a very difficult mind frame to break out of because it was for me, and still is. I have to keep reminding myself that places are different. Situations are different. And because of those fundamental differences, everything else connected to those differences is also different. The architecture in Italy, very different than the architecture in Morocco. The cost of living in Italy is very different than the cost of living in Morocco. Everything's tied together, and just like you can have two different Venetian restaurants, and the average price of everything at one restaurant is much higher than the average price of everything at the other restaurant, that's exactly what it's like for different countries. The circumstances are different, and so the pricing is different. And it's very simple to say and to intellectually understand, but you really have to imbibe it. You have to accept that. Accept that the world is different. You can have two identical restaurants in one town, but if one restaurant is located in one area, it might be twice as expensive as the other restaurant, even if they have the same amount of table and chairs, the same type of food, the same amount of waitstaff. The other restaurant's going to cost less. Same thing with countries. So, aside from countries just being different, the other biggest trick on Airbnb, trick in quotes, we've already mentioned it, but it bears repeating, book more than 27 days consecutively wherever you're renting. For travelers, this probably isn't going to be a problem. You're going to be living in a place for a month. But if you book 27 days at a place, you don't get the Airbnb monthly discount. If you book 28 days, you get the Airbnb monthly discount. And again, these are not piddly discounts. These are 30, 50, I have paid an 80% discount before, more than once, because that host wants exposure. That host wants good reviews to come in, so they'll price their stuff super low in the hopes that someone will appreciate. They're like, okay, it's $1,200, but I'll charge $300 per month, and then they have to like it no matter what. And you know what? They're right. I choose non-reviewed hosts pretty often. I choose new listings a lot because they often have drastic price cuts. But that's why Airbnb is so cheap, because I rent it by the month. And you can too. All those $150 apartments, if you rented them for 27 days, they'd be closer to $300 something. If you rent them for 28 days, take off 50 and 60%, now they cost $150 per month. 28 days is just 1 month according to the Airbnb policy, but I've talked to many hosts at this point, and the reason they give such steep discounts is because if anyone is there over a month, they have so much less work to do. Imagine if you had a guest staying for 3 days, another one for 4 days, then another one for 2 days. Every single time a guest comes in, they have to clean the entire thing, replace all the linen, do laundry, get fresh towels, make sure the soaps, they have to redo the whole apartment. And nobody wants to do that. So if you book for a whole month, the host doesn't have to work as much. Airbnb likes you more because people who stay longer are generally more responsible with the place that they stay in. So guests who stay longer kind of make it easier for both Airbnb and the host, and you get huge discounts as a result. Very common, I would say 30% is the standard. The average discount is about 30% on Airbnb. I'm surprised if it's not a 30% discount from the regular listing. But if you go and reserve those ones that don't have big monthly discounts, you can check their bookings. They frequently do not have many bookings. Because if you're charging someone to stay for 2 days or for 30 days at the same daily rate, then clearly something is wrong with the pricing. Because you have to do so much more work. If for the guy that stays for 2 days, why would you charge them the same amount as someone who stays 30 days? Airbnb works because countries are different. Cost of living is different around the world in different countries, and even in different cities. And 2, get that monthly discount. If you're going to travel anyway, don't travel for 27 days. Don't stay for 27 days in one place, especially if you want to save money when you can save hundreds of dollars by booking for 1 extra day. Also, if you're teaching English or you have a remote job, you probably want to stay longer in a place anyway, so you can settle in and just feel comfortable in your area. Set up your workstation, teach a few months, you have enough money for the next year. Book the minimum of 28 days. You'll get the exact same discount as if you booked 54 days. And then that discount is locked in once you make the first booking of 28 days. If you stay 3 extra days, you still have that same discount you got for all 28 days daily rate. You don't pay the regular price for the extra 3 days. So you can keep extending your stay week by week or by a couple weeks each time, and you'll get the same locked-in discount that you got the first time you booked 1 month, 28 days. Those are most of the questions and comments I've received more than a few times whenever I told people the prices I was paying on Airbnb. Yes, those prices are real and completely publicly available. You can go on the website or get the app and check them yourself. Daydream about living in a $300 apartment. Those are the by the numbers real prices in other countries. No, Airbnb is not more evil than any other for-profit company. They simply facilitate landowners to contract with renters. And because of how well Airbnb has facilitated that, it's led to more property owners investing in property so that they can extract more money from renters. But even with that, you can still get very affordable apartments all around the world, and probably within your own country. Well, where are all these places? In the middle of nowhere? No. Most of these apartments are in population centers, are in cities and towns, because most humans in the world live in cities and towns. Is it really worth it to use Airbnb to rent these cheaper places? If you need to save money, and especially if you're a fluent English speaker, 100%. If you're a fluent English speaker, then you have a remote job instantly if you don't have one yet. And instead of spending whatever you are spending now on rent and utilities, you can move to an Airbnb that costs exactly what you want to pay, and you don't pay utilities on that, you just pay the rent, and utilities are included. So yeah, it's certainly financially worth it if you're looking for a way to save money. Airbnb-ing a cheap apartment is one of the easiest ways to do it. And you can move month by month. All of these benefits you don't really have a commitment other than the month for the monthly discount. But even if you don't get the monthly discount, those $150 apartments are $300. So for whatever reason you only want to stay in a place a couple weeks, that's fine. You'll still be saving money. You'll be saving a little less money, but saving $1,350 versus saving $1,150, you're still saving $1,150. It's still a good deal. It still makes financial sense to rent cheaper apartments that include utilities. Oh, and however long you rent the apartment, you don't fix anything in it. That's another great part of Airbnb. The host fixes this is their property, so you're never going to own it, but you can live in there as long as that apartment is available. Enjoy all of the free unlimited amenities, not to mention those around the neighborhood like outdoor exercise gyms. And when the shower breaks, ask them to put in a new shower. When the fridge breaks, ask them to put in a new fridge, and so on. You can use whatever it is as much as you want. As long as you don't break it, the host is fixing it. They fix everything, which is saving you time, which you can use to do whatever you want. Is this real? I can't believe it's real. It is real. Go check those numbers yourself. And I know I've reiterated that many times, but I know that's still the number one thing going through people's heads. There's no way there are that many countries with $300 apartments or $150 apartments. There are. Go put in a country, put in the dates, an arbitrary 28-day, 4 weeks stint in the calendar, and then set the filter to the lowest setting, and you'll find all the cheapest houses. And I don't do that. I don't always get the lowest setting. I used to before, for sure. I just stayed in hostels. Oh my gosh, I didn't even think about hostels, but they totally are in here. They should be in here for sure. Because if you're traveling, hostels are under $100 in tons of countries also. It's so easy to get a $100 hostel per month. But I like private rooms because then you'll be able to remote work a lot easier. But because I worked on my passive income this whole time, I have enough that I get $400 apartments instead. And discounted $400 apartments are very nice. If you're in a cold place, they always have a heater. If you're in a hot place, they always have a cooler. They always have a refrigerator. There's almost always a kitchen. There's a private bathroom, private room, good door with a lock. They just have more amenities and are generally more private. So I pay a little bit more. $450 maybe is a pretty good average. I don't even think it's that much. Honestly, it's only like $400. So it's really, I thought I paid more, but that's like $50 more than the 350 apartments I've been talking about this whole time. So I guess I pay $70 more for appliances and a kitchen for the month. And if you check Airbnb, you'll see there are houses, you can spend $2,000 a day if you want to at places, but you can also spend $5 per day. I recommend the latter for most people, since most people need to save a little bit of money. They need a little bit of breathing room. And if you want to do the English teacher lifestyle, Airbnb is a real easy way to pick your own private room and teach online. I mean, you can do that in any country where you have a private room and Wi-Fi. It's really easy to start teaching English in person, but if you don't want to do that, or you have a country like Austria, for example, that you think is beautiful and you've always wanted to live there, go find the cheapest apartment in Austria that looks comfortable to you, and you can get paid $1,500 to $2,000 a month pretty easily if you just look around and choose whichever platform you like. If you commit to one platform, like if you commit to, I will be on this platform 25 hours a week, and you give them the schedule of your availability for 25 hours, those more organized schools generally pay more than the minimum $1,500 English teaching per month. So if you think you could teach, but you don't want to live in the countries where they pay you the most money to teach, you can live in another country, make a similar amount of money, and live in your dream country instead. It'll be more expensive than the other countries you could choose, but if you love Mozart and you want to live in his country for a while, there are 11 homes right now for less than $700. So you'll still make enough to live in Austria and feed yourself and get around and stare at the unbelievable mountains they have over there. Have a great time. I could just keep talking and keep looking up different prices on Airbnbs for every single country, and just be like, hey, it's the Airbnb episode, okay? So I just have to check every single country in the world and see what the prices are like. Let's check a couple more. Slovenia, also under 700. France, under 700. Germany is probably a little cheaper. Yeah, Germany is like under 600. Czechia, oh, because Prague. Prague's such a pricey baby. I remember France being cheap. Tons in France for under 600. So you could spend time, maybe in your dream country for a month, spend an extra $400 that month. You'll still be saving money teaching English online, but you can be in this beautiful landscape that you've always dreamed of. Great way to achieve some dreams and save a little money. Save a little money in an expensive country, and then go to the cheap ones for a few months and save up a bunch more. And the more you travel, the more you use Airbnb, the better you're going to get at traveling, the easier and cheaper everything is going to get. I use Skyscanner and Airbnb almost exclusively now, because if I hunt around on a bunch of different sites, I don't see a huge difference in rooming prices. The prices are just about the same, and time is the most important resource. So I spend very little time choosing my next flight or room these days. And on the off chance that I have checked another booking app, which I do every now and then, it's always more expensive. And not by a lot, it doesn't matter if you use a different one, it's like $20 more per month. But since the prices are practically the same, or worse on other booking apps, I just use the one I'm familiar with, that's everywhere, save myself time. So I have it to read comics, and jog, and visit the outdoor gyms, and eat chorizos. If you're going to get a hostel instead of an apartment, yeah, that'll be cheaper. But then, again, I don't use all the different hostel things, I just go for Hostel World. Has the biggest catalog, it's right there, it's easy. So whatever else Airbnb seems like, it is a platform that connects property owners with people who want to rent that property. And because the world is so vast, and the circumstances everywhere are so different, so is the quality of life and the prices. It's very easy to find around this big blue dot a country or a city and a Airbnb stay that has a better quality of life for a drastically lower cost. And I encourage you to find that place. I find it every month. I love finding them. I love looking through Airbnb and finding a new place. And if they have an air fryer or something like that I love to use because I love cooking with an air fryer, or if there's a porch with a hammock, oh man, yep, I'm like, yep, you did it. Good job. Now I'm going to get this place. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you're having a great day. Have fun checking out all the listings on Airbnb. You can talk to me at bitofarambler@gmail.com or bitofarambler at Blue Sky or Lemmy, and I will talk to you again soon.